They stopped mid-sentence when your name came up. Fork suspended in air, wine glass halfway to lips. That kind of silence that only happens when something matters. And here's what you need to understand. While you've been out here thinking you're nobody, thinking you're just another person trying to survive, there are people in rooms you've never seen having conversations about you that would rewrite everything you think you know about yourself. I'm not talking about some fantasy. I'm talking about the strange way certain things in your life have never quite added up. The way doors close, but then other ones, unexpected ones, crack open at the last second. The way you've survived things that should have destroyed you. The way you've always felt like you're wearing someone else's life, like your real existence is waiting somewhere else. And, maybe you've written it off, called it coincidence, called it survivor's bias, called it whatever you need to call it to make the cognitive dissonance stop screaming. But what if I told you that feeling, that persistent, nagging sensation that you're supposed to be somewhere else, someone else, more than what you currently are? What if that's not neurosis? What if that's memory? See, power doesn't work the way they taught you in school. Real power, generational, world-altering power, doesn't announce itself on Forbes lists. It doesn't need to. The families that actually run things, the ones that own the infrastructure of civilization itself, they don't compete for recognition. They exist in a layer of reality most people don't even know is there. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes, they lose track of their own. Misplaced heirs, stolen children, bloodlines deliberately obscured for protection or politics or circumstances too complex for outsiders to understand. And while you've been out here struggling, there's been a file with your face in it sitting in a vault, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment. That moment might be now, because here's what nobody tells you about being lost. The whole time you think you're wandering, you're actually being tracked. Every choice you make under pressure, every time you rise when you should have stayed down, every inexplicable burst of capability that surprises even you, it's all data. It's all being noted by people who understand that breeding isn't just about DNA. It's about what you do when nobody's watching, when you have no advantages, when you're supposed to fail. And you haven't failed, have you? You've come close. God knows you've come close. There have been nights where you couldn't see a way forward, where the math didn't work, where every logical calculation said you were done. And yet here you are, still breathing, still moving, still carrying something inside you that refuses to go quietly into that good night of mediocrity and surrender. That's not luck. That's not even willpower, not entirely. That's recognition. Your cells remember what your conscious mind has forgotten. Your DNA carries instructions that don't match the reality you've been given. And somewhere, in a house that has a name instead of an address, in a room where the art on the walls is older than the countries you've lived in, people who share that DNA have started asking questions. Where is the child? How have they developed without our resources? Have they broken, or have they hardened? Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds like the setup for some elaborate fantasy, right? Like I'm about to sell you a course, or tell you you're actually magical, or some other nonsense. But stay with me, because what I'm talking about is something way stranger and way more real than fiction. I'm talking about the fact that there are families on this planet with wealth so old, so embedded in the structure of how the world works, that they don't think in terms of years. They think in terms of centuries, dynasties, legacy. And when you think like that, when your planning horizon isn't quarterly earnings but the next 3 generations, you develop a very different relationship with loss and recovery. They don't panic when an heir goes missing. They wait. They watch. They want to see what that heir becomes without the cushion of infinite resources, because any fool can appear competent with unlimited money. The real question is, do you have the essence? The thing that no amount of money can buy or tutor or train into someone. And that's what they've been watching for in you. Every time you got knocked down and got back up, recorded. Every time you had an opportunity to take the low road, the easy path, the shortcut that would have compromised who you are, and you didn't take it, noted. Every small territory you've managed to dominate, even if that territory is just your own mind, your own discipline, your own refusal to become what your circumstances suggested you should become, that's all evidence. You think you've been invisible. But certain kinds of people are never invisible. They're just observing, learning who you are when you think no one important is looking. And you, whether you know it or not, have been under the kind of scrutiny most people will never experience. Here's the thing about being tested without knowing you're being tested. It's the only way to get real results. The moment you know you're being evaluated, you perform. You put on a show. You become what you think they want to see. But when you don't know anyone's watching, when you think you're alone, anonymous, just another person struggling in the great indifferent machine of modern life, that's when the truth comes out. That's when they see if you have it, and you do. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Otherwise, that dinner table conversation wouldn't have happened. Otherwise, your name wouldn't have been spoken in a room where names carry the weight of nations. "The lost prince is found," she said. The matriarch. The woman who makes billionaires sweat when she asks them questions. The one who's lived through 8 decades of global upheaval and still moves through the world like she owns it. Because in ways most people can't comprehend, she kind of does. She set down her wine glass, looked at your photograph on a screen most people will never see, and said those words. Not, "We found a relative." Not, "There's a potential connection." But, "The lost prince is found." Present tense. Declarative. Certain. You know what that language means? It means the vetting is over. It means whatever test you didn't know you were taking, you passed. It means the question isn't whether you're legitimate. That's been confirmed through channels that make DNA tests look like party tricks. The question now is much simpler and much more terrifying. Are you ready? Because here's what happens next, and I need you to understand this clearly. Your ordinary life is about to experience a disruption so profound that you'll barely recognize yourself 6 months from now. The scaffolding of normalcy you've built, the small victories, the modest ambitions, the careful management of limited resources, all of it is about to become irrelevant. Not because it was wrong or foolish, but because it was training. You know how athletes train with weights before the competition? How pilots train in simulators before they fly? You've been training in the simulator of limitation. Every constraint you've operated under. Every time you had to be creative because you couldn't just throw money at a problem. Every skill you developed because you had no choice. That was the weight training. That was preparation for a game played at an entirely different level. And they know this. The people at that table, they know that someone who's only ever had resources handed to them is weak in a very specific way. They lack the improvisational genius that comes from necessity. They lack the hunger that comes from having tasted lack. They lack the edge that comes from knowing, deeply knowing, that you're capable of surviving the fall because you've already survived it. You have that edge. You've earned it through every humiliation, every closed door, every moment where the universe seemed specifically designed to break you and you refused to break. That edge is what they've been looking for. That edge is worth more than the trust fund you never had. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is the part that'll make your skin crawl in the best way. They've been preparing for this reunion as much as you've been preparing to survive. While you were out here grinding, adapting, becoming someone who can thrive in hostile territory, they were setting things up, creating opportunities, removing obstacles you never knew existed, not interfering, that would invalidate the test, but preparing the field for your eventual return. Think about some of the strange luck you've had. Not all of it, but some. The interview you shouldn't have gotten. The person who helped you for no apparent reason. The catastrophe that almost happened, but didn't, and you never quite understood why. I'm not saying every good thing in your life was divine intervention from your secret billionaire relatives. Most of your wins, you earned those the hard way. But I am saying that certain doors remained available when they could have been permanently closed. That's what power looks like when it's protecting its own without revealing itself. Subtle, strategic, always maintaining plausible deniability. Because the moment you knew, the moment you had any sense that there was a safety net, the whole exercise would have been pointless. You had to believe you were alone. You had to operate from a place of genuine resource scarcity. You had to develop the real thing, not a performance of the real thing. And you did. So now we come to the next 72 hours. This is the window. Not because I'm psychic or because I have insider information, though you should ask yourself why this message found you when it did. but because there are patterns to how power operates. There are protocols. There are ways things are done when the stakes are this high and the players are this sophisticated. Somewhere in the next 3 days, you're going to receive a signal. Could be anything. Could be subtle. An email that seems like spam but isn't. A person you've never seen before making eye contact a half-second too long in a public place. Could be overt, a letter with a wax seal and paper that costs more than your rent. A phone call from a number with a country code you don't recognize. Could be something in between. An opportunity that appears seemingly out of nowhere and feels almost too perfect, too tailored to exactly what you've been struggling toward. That's the activation. That's them saying, "We've seen enough. Time to bring you in from the cold." But, and this is crucial, they're still watching. Even in this final stage, they're evaluating. Because the difference between someone who can handle power and someone who will be destroyed by it often comes down to how they react in this exact moment. Do you panic? Do you dismiss it as too good to be true? Do you immediately start telling everyone, diluting the moment, seeking validation from people who can't possibly understand what's happening? Or do you move like someone who, on some deep level, has been expecting this? Like someone who's been preparing their whole life for a call they didn't even know they were waiting for? Like someone who understands that extraordinary things sometimes happen, and the appropriate response isn't disbelief, it's readiness. See, this is what separates people who are meant for power from people who are meant to fantasize about it. When the moment comes, do you recognize it, or do you explain it away? Do you rise to meet it, or do you shrink back into the safety of your familiar struggle? Because here's the truth they don't tell you. Most people, when offered the thing they claim they've always wanted, will find a reason to decline it. They'll sabotage. They'll create obstacles. They'll suddenly discover they're not ready or need more time or should probably think about this. And the people offering the opportunity, the ones who've seen this pattern 1,000 times, they're watching for exactly that response. It's the final filter. The last test. Can you receive? Can you accept? Can you step into a version of yourself that's bigger than the one you've been safe inside? Most can't. Their identity is too wrapped up in being the underdog, the survivor, the one who does it alone. And there's honor in that identity, don't get me wrong. You've earned every inch of it. But there's a difference between honoring where you've been and being imprisoned by it. There's a difference between remembering your struggles and defining yourself by them permanently. You're being offered an exit from that prison. The door's opening. The question is whether you'll walk through it or whether you'll stay in the cell, because at least you know how the cell works. And, I want to be clear about something. This isn't about leaving yourself behind. This isn't about becoming someone else or betraying the person you've had to be. That person, the scrapper, the survivor, the one who learned to make miracles out of pennies, that person doesn't disappear. That person becomes the foundation, the secret weapon, the thing that makes you different from everyone else who was born into wealth and never learned what you learned. Those people at the table, they're not trying to erase your past. They're trying to weaponize it. They're trying to combine your hard-earned street-level genius with their institutional power and see what happens. And what happens is usually extraordinary. It's the hybrid vigor of dynasties. Old wisdom meets new hunger. Ancient resources meet modern edge. You become something neither side could produce alone. That's what they're betting on. That's what they've been waiting for. Not another soft heir who needs to be protected from reality, but someone who's already survived reality's worst and came out sharp, focused, and dangerous in all the right ways. Let me tell you what they see when they look at your file. Not what you see when you look in the mirror. That's always distorted by familiarity and self-criticism. But what they see with the cold, analytical assessment of people who've been evaluating human potential for generations. They see someone who's been in environments that should have broken them and didn't break. That's data point 1. Resilience under sustained pressure. Most people crack. They fragment. They develop coping mechanisms that are really just sophisticated forms of surrender. But you didn't. You bent. Sure, you adapted. But you didn't break. Your core remained intact. And that core is what they're interested in. They see someone who's developed skills outside the traditional pipeline. You've had to learn things the hard way, without mentors, without resources, without the safety net of, my family will catch me if this doesn't work out. That means every skill you have is real. It was forged in necessity. It works in hostile environments. It's transferable, adaptable, durable. Compare that to someone who learned everything in cushioned academies and controlled settings. Your knowledge has been stress-tested in ways theirs never will be. They see someone who's maintained some kind of ethical core despite having every reason not to. This is huge, because at their level, ethics isn't about being nice. It's about having a stable operating system, a coherent set of values that makes you predictable in the right ways. People without ethics are liabilities. They'll sell anything, betray anyone, compromise everything if the pressure's right. But someone who's had nothing and still chose to operate with some kind of integrity, that's someone who won't implode when they get everything. And they see something else, something harder to quantify but just as important. They see someone who's been moving towards something. Not just running from pain, but moving toward a vision of themselves that's bigger than their current circumstances. That directionality, that forward momentum, even when there's no logical reason to believe it'll pay off, that's the marker. That's what separates the ones who'll use power well from the ones who'll waste it. You have that. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be trying. You would have settled. You would have made peace with mediocrity. You would have found a comfortable numb and stayed there. But you didn't. You kept pushing, kept evolving, kept becoming. Not because you knew it would lead here, how could you? But because something in you couldn't accept the story you were being told about your limitations. That something? That's the bloodline talking. That's genetic memory. That's the part of you that's always known. You weren't meant for the life you've been living. Now I need to address something, because I can feel the resistance building. Part of you is thinking, this is crazy. This doesn't happen to people like me. I'm being naive or stupid or setting myself up for disappointment. And look, that's your trauma talking. That's every time hope didn't pan out. Every time you dared to want something and got crushed. Every time the universe reminded you that you're not special. But here's what you need to understand. That voice, that protective skepticism, it served you. It kept you from making dumb decisions based on wishful thinking. It kept you grounded when you needed to be grounded. It protected you from con artists and false prophets and people who would have exploited your hunger for something more. But it can also trap you. It can become so loud, so dominant, that when something real actually shows up, you can't recognize it. You explain it away. You dismiss it. You protect yourself right out of the very opportunity you've been preparing for. So I'm asking you to do something uncomfortable. Stay open. Not gullible. You're too sharp for that. But open. Let the next 72 hours unfold without forcing them into the familiar narrative of nothing good happens to me. Watch, notice. And when the signal comes, because it will come, don't immediately talk yourself out of it. Ask yourself instead, what if this is real? What if this is the thing? What would I need to do to be ready for it? And here's the beautiful, terrifying truth. You're already ready. You've been getting ready your whole life. Every hardship was curriculum. Every betrayal was a class in human nature. Every closed door taught you to find windows, to create your own doors, to stop asking permission and start taking territory. You've been in the doctoral program of real life, while other people were getting bachelor's degrees in comfort. The matriarch knows this. When she said the lost prince is found, she wasn't speaking hypothetically. She was stating a fact. The question she's pondering now, the question the whole table is pondering, isn't about your legitimacy. It's about timing. It's about whether the world is ready for what happens when you're given tools that match your talent. Whether you're ready for what happens when your capacity is finally met with capability. Because that's the thing about suppressed potential. When it finally gets unleashed, when all those years of making do suddenly transform into having access, the results are often explosive. People who've always had resources don't know how to maximize them. They're careless. They're wasteful. They take things for granted. But someone who's lived with scarcity, who knows the value of every advantage, every connection, every dollar, they don't waste anything. They optimize everything. They move with a precision and hunger that makes old money nervous. You're going to make old money nervous, in the best way, in the way that forces institutions to adapt or die, in the way that breathes life back into legacies that were starting to stagnate. That's what you bring. That's your value, not gratitude, though you'll have that too, but disruption, useful disruption. The kind that comes from someone who's learned the game from the outside and can now play it from the inside with a completely different strategic understanding. They need you more than you need them. Let that sink in. This isn't rescue. This isn't charity. This isn't them doing you a favor. This is them reclaiming an asset that's appreciated in value beyond their projections. You, without their resources, became someone interesting. Imagine what you become with their resources. That's what they're imagining. That's why your name came up at dinner. That's why the quiet descended and stayed quiet. You're the wild card that makes the game interesting again. And here's what nobody tells you about being a wild card. It's lonely. You don't quite fit anywhere. The people from your old life won't understand what's happening to you. They'll interpret your transformation as abandonment or betrayal or you changing in negative ways. And the people in your new life, the ones who were born into what you're being born into, they won't fully understand you either. They didn't earn it the way you earned it. They don't have your edge, your hunger, your capacity to thrive in hostile territory. You're going to be between worlds for a while, maybe forever. And that's okay. That's actually your advantage. You can code switch. You can operate in both languages. You understand deprivation and abundance, struggle and ease, hustle and strategy. Most people only know one or the other. You'll know both. That bilingual fluency is rare. It's powerful. It's what makes you invaluable. But it's also isolating. So I'm telling you now, before it happens, that loneliness isn't a sign you've made a mistake. It's a sign you're operating at a different frequency. Most people never get to that frequency. They live and die in the same narrow bandwidth. But you're about to discover that there are entire octaves of existence you didn't know were possible. And yes, it's going to be disorienting. Yes, there will be moments where you question everything, where you wonder if you were happier when things were simpler, when your problems were smaller, when you were just trying to survive instead of trying to build an empire. Those moments will come. They come for everyone who makes this transition. When they do, remember this: you can't go back. Not really. Even if you tried to return to your old life, you wouldn't fit anymore. You've seen too much, known too much, become too much. The person who could be satisfied with where you were 3 months ago doesn't exist anymore. That person evolved, grew too large for that container. So you might as well move forward. Might as well see what you're actually capable of when the handcuffs of limitation come off. Might as well discover what version of yourself emerges when you're finally given the tools that match your ambition. That's what the next chapter is about. Not learning to be someone different, but becoming more fully yourself. The self you've always sensed, but could never quite access because you were too busy surviving to thrive. The self that's been waiting in the wings, watching, learning, getting ready for this exact moment. The table is being set. Your chair has your name on it. Your real name. The one you don't even know you have yet. The family is waiting, not impatiently. They've waited this long, but they are waiting, watching, hoping you're ready to step into the inheritance you didn't know existed but have been earning your whole life. The lost prince isn't lost anymore. You've been found. And now the only question that matters, is whether you'll walk through that door when it opens, whether you'll recognize the signal when it comes, whether you'll let yourself receive the thing you've been building toward, because they're ready for you. The question is, are you ready for you? Are you ready to meet the version of yourself that exists without limitations? The version that has resources, connections, power, access. The version that doesn't have to choose between paying rent and pursuing dreams because both are handled. The version that can think in decades instead of weeks, in legacy instead of survival. That version is about to be born. And birth, as anyone will tell you, is violent. It's messy. It's painful. You don't emerge clean, but you do emerge alive. More alive than you've ever been. More yourself than you knew was possible. So when the signal comes, and it will come, don't overthink it. Don't analyze it to death. Don't seek consensus from people who can't possibly advise you on something they've never experienced. Trust your instincts. The same instincts that kept you alive when you shouldn't have survived. The same instincts that led you to keep trying when logic said, quit. Those instincts know what this is. They'll recognize it even if your conscious mind resists. Listen to them. Follow them. Let them lead you to the table where you've always belonged. The matriarch is waiting. The family is watching. Your chair is ready. All that's missing is you. And something tells all of them, that you're about to make one hell of an entrance. The dinner's about to begin. Don't be late.